Jake Humphrey and Damian Hughes. High performance. Lessons from the best on becoming your best. Every champion you admire, from Olympic gold medalists to groundbreaking entrepreneurs, shares one core mindset. They view setbacks as springboards. Rather than shying away from challenges, they zero in on what they can control, transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth. Their edge doesn't come from luck or talent alone, but from everyday choices, approaching difficult conversations as learning moments, pursuing work that aligns with their strengths, and surrounding themselves with people who inspire progress. Over time, these small, consistent habits generate momentum, fueling creativity under pressure and resilience in the face of uncertainty. In this blink, you'll discover how shifting your focus from circumstances to responses can spark lasting motivation, calm your nerves, and help you harness your strengths. You'll also explore strategies for developing mental flexibility and creating a work culture where everyone can thrive. Because in the end, high performance isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing growth, even when it's hard. Taking responsibility drives performance. In 2017, teenage racing driver Billy Monger was involved in a crash that led to the amputation of both legs. His response surprised many. He didn't focus on blame or loss. He talked instead about what he could still do. That mindset of personal responsibility, acknowledging the situation and choosing how to respond to it, is one of the most consistent patterns among those who perform at the highest level. The core idea is simple. What happens in life isn't always your choice, but how you respond is. That thinking is captured in a formula used by many top performers. Life plus response equals outcome. This shifts attention away from what's outside your control and toward what you can actually influence. This change in focus builds what psychologists call a sense of agency. It helps people stay active rather than passive, which leads to more consistent performance and higher resilience. Former footballer Robin van Persie explained how much of his early career was disrupted by frustration. He would fixate on what others did wrong, referees, teammates, the media, and let it affect his game. Things started to change when he began writing letters to his future self, describing the player he wanted to become and how he needed to behave to get there. That habit helped him redirect his attention and reclaim control. This doesn't mean you should ignore reality. High performers still face setbacks, failure, and criticism, but they choose not to get stuck in them. Percussionist Evelyn Glennie lost her hearing as a child, but continued to pursue music by training herself to feel sound through vibration. James Timpson built a successful company by hiring ex-offenders, not because it was easy, but because he believed in judging people by their current actions, not their past. Taking responsibility means choosing how to act in the face of challenge. It's the first building block of a high-performance mindset, but once you take ownership, the next step is keeping that effort going. That depends on how you build and sustain motivation. Motivation starts with autonomy, competence, and belonging. When Zach George first hit puberty, he was far from fit, eating junk food daily and avoiding exercise. His dad promised him a PlayStation if he lost weight, and Zach delivered, but only until he'd claimed the prize. It wasn't until years later, after Zach had become a CrossFit athlete, that he realized the magic wasn't in another external reward, but in how he saw himself. He began to identify as someone who genuinely cared about health and performance, and that mental shift turned occasional effort into a lifelong habit. That story echoes a landmark experiment by psychologists Edward Desai and Richard Ryan. They gave students 3 days of puzzles, paying one group for each solution and paying the other group nothing. Sure enough, the paid students worked harder at first, but as soon as the money stopped, their motivation evaporated. The unpaid students, meanwhile, kept puzzling as happily on day 3 as they had on day 1. External trinkets can spark a short-lived burst, but won't build the deep drive we see in high performers. So, where does lasting motivation come from? High performers consistently draw on 3 core psychological needs. First, autonomy. The freedom to pursue goals that align with their own values, making tasks feel like choices rather than obligations. Second, competence. The belief that their skills and efforts truly matter, reinforced by visible progress. And third, belonging. A sense of connection to a team or community that shares their purpose and keeps them accountable. To see these forces in action, try a quick mental exercise. Think of a few routine tasks, maybe a work assignment, your daily workout, or even doing the dishes. For each one, ask yourself 2 questions. How much choice do I feel in doing this? And how confident am I in doing it well? Now imagine plotting these on a grid, with choice on one axis and confidence on the other. Tasks that fall into the high choice, high confidence corner already support autonomy and competence. If a task ranks high in choice but low in confidence, it points to an opportunity to build your skills. On the flip side, low choice but high confidence tasks may benefit from being reframed to better align with your values or shared with others to create a sense of connection. And anything stuck in the low choice, low confidence zone might be a candidate for delegation or rethinking altogether. When these 3 needs, autonomy, competence, and belonging, are in sync, they fuel genuine internal drive. You feel more capable, more connected, and more fulfilled. And once that foundation is in place, you're ready for the next level, mastering your emotional state in the moments that matter most. Emotional control begins with clear thinking. In elite sports, the ability to manage pressure often separates champions from mere contenders. Chris Hoy, one of the most successful cyclists in British history, learned this the hard way. At the 2003 World Championships, he watched his rival break a world record, moments before his own event. Instead of sticking to his plan, Hoy panicked. He changed his strategy mid-race and finished a disappointing 4th. This wasn't a failure of skill, but of emotion. Like many high performers, Hoy discovered that mastering pressure begins with mastering your own mind. To perform at your best, it's essential to understand how your brain responds to stress. Your emotional instincts, or what's sometimes called the red brain, evolved to detect threats and act fast. But in modern life, this system often gets triggered by challenges that aren't actually dangerous. The rational part of the brain, the blue brain, is capable of pausing, planning, and seeing the bigger picture. But it can easily be drowned out when emotions run high. The key to staying in control is recognizing when the red brain is taking over and shifting the balance back toward calm, rational thinking. One way to do that is to break down what's actually being asked of you. When Hoy prepared for the Olympics a year later, he worked with a psychologist to visualize different scenarios, including ones that had previously derailed him. By picturing how he would respond, he removed their power to overwhelm him. Another strategy is to focus on your own strengths. Dina Asher-Smith, one of Britain's top sprinters, used this approach after a shaky semi-final left her doubting herself. Her coach reminded her she didn't need to do anything special, just rely on what she'd done 1,000 times before. That mental shift helped her deliver a gold medal performance. Finally, it helps to rethink what's really at stake. Rugby star Jonny Wilkinson spent much of his career feeling crushed by the idea that his next game might define his worth. Only later did he realize that detaching his identity from his achievements gave him the freedom to compete without fear. These strategies take time to learn, but the examples show that steady practice pays off. Once emotional control is in place, the next challenge is maintaining identity and purpose, even through change. Sustainable success starts with what you do best. When Jo Malone was asked by Estee Lauder executives to share her perfume formulas, she didn't have any on paper. She mixed scents by instinct, adding drops until each blend felt right. What others saw as unorthodox was actually her superpower, an intuitive skill born of hands-on experience rather than textbooks or formal training. Most people aren't taught to think this way. Studies show we fixate on weaknesses, what's missing or broken, instead of building on strengths. High performers flip that bias, identifying where they shine and making it the foundation of their work. often those strengths are first spotted by others. Many describe a pivotal golden seed moment when a teacher, coach, or colleague labels a hidden ability. Olympic champion Kelly Holmes recalls her PE teacher noticing her talent after a cross-country race. That recognition gave her a sense of identity and a reason to work harder. Your edge isn't always obvious. Some talents never show up on school reports or CVs. That's why it pays to step back and look at the evidence. Where have your achievements repeatedly come from? Which tasks feel most natural? And which successes drew genuine praise? Be careful here. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger coined the Dunning-Kruger effect, which says that people who lack a skill often can't accurately judge their own ability, leading them to overestimate how good they are. To avoid this trap, lean on objective feedback and real-world results rather than gut feeling alone. Enjoyment offers another clue. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls it flow, a state of deep, focused immersion where challenge, skill, and pleasure converge. When you lose yourself in a task and time seems to vanish, you're likely operating in your sweet spot. To build lasting success, start by listing your proudest wins and the skills behind them. Recognize the patterns, solicit honest feedback to counter any blind spots, and reinforce those strengths at every turn. When you focus on your unique abilities, verify your self-assessments against real outcomes and deploy yourself in environments that align with your strengths. You'll lay the groundwork for sustainable high performance. Cultivate a flexible mindset for creative problem solving. When Toto Wolff first walked into the Mercedes Formula One headquarters, it wasn't the cars or engines that caught his eye. It was the stale coffee cups and week-old newspapers left lying around. To him, these small signs of neglect pointed to something deeper, a mindset problem. The team had slipped into unexamined routines where overlooked details quietly set the standard. In Wolff's view, if you don't sweat the small stuff, you'll never be ready to master the big stuff. His example highlights a truth that all high performers understand. Effort alone isn't enough if your mental habits keep steering you into the same worn-out grooves. They learn to spot the "this is how we've always done it" shortcuts and challenge them head-on. One powerful way to start is by making a small shift in your self-talk. Simply adding the word "yet" can reframe your thinking. "I can't handle this" becomes "I can't handle this yet," transforming a dead end into an open invitation to grow, learn, and take the next step forward. At the heart of flexibility lies perspective. Great problem solvers don't just see things for what they are. They see what they could be. They reframe challenges by looking beyond the obvious, treating everyday elements as tools in disguise. Take a classic example. You're asked to mount a candle on a wall using only a box of pins. The solution only appears when you stop seeing the box as packaging and start seeing it as a potential candle holder instead. Adopting this kind of mad scientist mindset, asking "how else could I use this?" breaks through the mental blocks of functional fixedness and sparks innovation. This kind of flexibility also comes to life in diverse partnerships. When Holly Tucker launched Not on the High Street, a platform for independent artisans selling unique handmade gifts, her big ideas needed balance. Enter Sophie Cornish, whose strengths in market research, logistics, and financial planning complemented Holly's creative energy. By combining bold vision with operational discipline, they transformed a kitchen table idea into a multi-million-pound business. It's that blend of contrasting mindsets that exposes blind spots, expands possibilities, and fuels real innovation. Developing adaptable thinking is within anyone's reach. Notice when you default to old habits and add "yet" to challenge yourself. Reframe small problems before tackling bigger ones and seek out voices that push back on your assumptions. When familiar answers fail, ask, "What haven't I imagined?" That spark of curiosity leads to breakthroughs. This individual flexibility lays the groundwork for cohesive teams. You'll see how this fuels purpose and culture in the final section. Unifying a team through purpose and culture. Picture 3 bricklayers at work. Ask the first what he's doing, and he says, laying bricks. The second replies, earning 10 pounds an hour. The third smiles, I'm helping build the grandest cathedral this town will ever see. That difference between punching a clock and waking up knowing you're part of something bigger lies at the heart of high performance. Great teams start with that cathedral, a big, hairy, audacious goal that makes every task meaningful. It might be propelling an underdog sports team into the playoffs or turning a kitchen table idea into a billion-dollar brand. Once that purpose is clear, leaders sweep away distractions, cutting pointless meetings, delegating side projects. So all energy drives toward the shared summit. But vision alone won't win titles. The real power is in the cultural architects, the teammates who stay late to mentor newcomers, who own their mistakes and invite honest conversations, who spot fresh solutions when old routines stall. Their commitment, humility, and resilience give the rest of the group permission to take smart risks, lean on each other when things go wrong, and trust that everyone will have each other's backs. Research from Stanford to Gallup shows that organizations forged by shared purpose and genuine engagement outpace better-funded rivals. Why? Because when you belong to a cause that matters, you dig deeper and stick together through every triumph and setback. And that belonging is rooted in emotional safety. Amy Edmondson spent years studying hospital teams, quietly observing wards where mistakes were rife, only to discover that it wasn't incompetence driving errors, but fear of speaking up. She surveyed staff about whether they felt safe admitting a near miss or asking a silly question, and found that teams who could openly own their errors without blame made far fewer hidden mistakes. In those environments of trust, people listened as much as they talked, picked up on a colleague's unease, and experimented freely without fearing punishment. Edmondson's research showed that when teams feel protected to voice doubts and share ideas, they become far more creative, adaptable, and united in the face of any challenge. If you're leading, your job is threefold. Point everyone toward the cathedral, embody the values you want to see, and empower those cultural architects to spread them. With purpose, trust, and safety at its core, any team can achieve and sustain extraordinary results. The main takeaway of this blink to High Performance by Jake Humphrey and Damian Hughes is that lasting excellence begins with one simple decision: to act on purpose. When you take responsibility for your responses, you build the confidence and resilience that drive forward momentum. Tapping into autonomy, competence, and belonging unlocks deep motivation that remains steadfast even when rewards fade. Cultivating emotional clarity and trusting your unique strengths lets you navigate pressure with creativity and calm. By adopting a growth mindset and nurturing a unifying culture, you empower yourself and others to adapt, innovate, and thrive. Embrace these habits today, and every challenge becomes a new opportunity for achievement. Okay, that's it for this blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. See you in the next blink.